You've watched it every autumn without a second thought. A ragged V of geese slicing across a graying sky, vanishing south with a certainty no map, no memory, no experience could account for. They are not guessing. Every migrating bird on Earth carries a compass sewn into its own body, a sense tuned to an invisible field that flows from pole to pole, silent, constant, older than the birds themselves. That field has shaped every migration, every act of biological certainty, for millions of years. Now imagine it goes silent. Imagine the immediate, instinctive panic that comes to mind. A hiker staring down at a brass pocket compass as its polished needle spins aimlessly in circles, or an airliner slipping quietly off course over a featureless ocean. We naturally tend to frame catastrophic scenarios around the failure of our own human tools. We picture lost orientation, stranded cargo vessels drifting in gray coastal fogs, and digital screens flashing helpless lost signal warnings in the palm of our hands. That intuitive picture, uncomfortable as it feels, is a far too gentle lie. The true catastrophe of a vanished magnetic field is not that we lose our way, it is that we lose our sky. The magnetic field is not merely a global navigation network for biological and mechanical wanderers. It is an invisible vault, a vast, deflective canopy generated thousands of miles beneath our feet that stands between every living cell and the raw, incinerating violence of the sun. Without it, the solar wind, a relentless, supersonic river of charged particles poured out continuously by our star, strikes our upper atmosphere with unmitigated, kinetic fury. It does not simply blow past. It strips away nitrogen and protective ozone, ionizes the upper air into a glowing mantle, and bathes the soil in an unseen, unrelenting shower of high-energy cosmic rays. What begins in the popular imagination as a broken compass ends in physical reality as the systematic unzipping of the atmospheric shield that keeps our world from becoming a cold, irradiated desert. To understand what remains when this invisible architecture falls, we must trace the fallout across the quiet spaces where daily human life meets the edge of an unspooling world, following the silent cascade from shattered communication grids down to the very soil beneath our feet. The taste of cold, stale coffee turns sour on the tongue as the radio console begins to hum with an unnatural, erratic static. In a timber municipality office on the edge of Hammerfest, Norway, a local radio operator adjusts the tuning dials, but every shortwave frequency is drowned out by a low, dry hiss. Outside, the Arctic night does not go dark. It fractures into undulating sheets of terrifying, violent magenta that ripple across the freezing water of the fjords like dye dissolving in a glass. Neighbors gather on porch steps, wrapped in heavy wool blankets, staring upward into a sky that no longer behaves according to the ancient laws of Earth. The cell towers stand dark, their delicate microchips scorched by massive induced ground currents, leaving the small coastal enclave utterly severed from the rest of the world. No news arrives from Oslo, and no emergency signals reach the fishing trawlers anchored out in the bay. In the violent, unearthly light reflecting off the hard-packed snow, an old man sits on a wooden bench and carefully winds a mechanical pocket watch, setting it down beside a stack of unsent handwritten letters that will never cross the mountain pass. High upon the dry, wind-scored terraces above Uyuni, Bolivia, the thin air carries a sharp, metallic smell like ozone lingering after a lightning strike that stings the back of the throat. A quinoa farmer steps out into the morning light, squinting against a glare that feels unnaturally harsh, as though a soft veil has been violently torn away from the sky. The dry earth beneath his leather boots radiates an uncomfortable, prickling warmth that has nothing to do with the morning air. Nearby, his herd of alpaca refuse to move toward the pasture, huddling tightly against a whitewashed stone wall, their eyes clouding over with rapid, opaque cataracts under the unfiltered bombardment of high-altitude ultraviolet rays. There is no fire, no blast wave, no rolling cloud of black smoke. There is only the quiet, invisible prickle of energy scouring the high plateau. The farmer kneels, scoops up a handful of dry soil, and watches it trickle through his calloused fingers, casting a shadow so faint in the stark, unshielded light that it seems almost erased. Take a moment to let the stillness of those places sit with you. It is deeply unsettling to realize how quickly the structures of our daily lives can dissolve when an invisible law of nature is quietly withdrawn. Stay with us, because as we move deeper into this scenario, the consequences shift from physical exposure to something far more intricate and far more revealing about human nature under pressure. The sharp, pungent scent of scorched bakelite and melting copper wire fills the subterranean access tunnels beneath the Shibuya district in Tokyo. Deep within a transit control depot, a senior electrical supervisor shines a battery-powered beam across rows of dead relay panels, listening as heavy-duty surge protectors pop like firecrackers along the damp concrete walls. Above ground, the world's most sophisticated urban power grid has suffered catastrophic geomagnetic overload. But 200 feet below the asphalt, survival becomes a matter of improvised engineering. The supervisor and her crew work in total, rhythmic silence, unrolling massive spools of heavy industrial copper tape to manually seal every ventilation shaft, cable duct, and emergency exit. They are transforming the subterranean train station into a massive improvised shield to protect hundreds of sheltering commuters from the radiation bathing the street level above. Exhausted, she sits back against the cold concrete pillar, resting her forehead against a hand-drawn schematic of the dark, unpowered tunnels. The ancient brass bell in the stone tower of a cliffside monastery on Mount Athos chimed twice, swung not by a monk pulling the hemp rope, but by the sudden accumulation of static electricity shifting the heavy metal in its cradle. A monk standing in the courtyard pauses his broom, listening as the quiet echo dies across the Aegean Sea. Around the peninsula, the sea lies flat and unnaturally still, reflecting a sun that appears stripped of its warm atmospheric bloom, shining down like a white-hot spotlight. Inside the monastery library, thousands of parchment manuscripts chronicle centuries of wars, plagues, and volcanic ash, yet not a single line speaks of a world where the sky itself has surrendered its shield. The brothers gather in the stone nave, sitting in shared, wordless meditation as the ambient light, filtering through the high narrow windows, turns an unearthly shade of pale violet. The monk gently sets his broom against the stone column, steps to the altar, and uses a brass snuffer to extinguish a single beeswax candle, watching its thin trail of gray smoke drift straight up into an unshielded sky. When medical engineers design a high-precision magnetic resonance imaging chamber, they enclose the entire room within thick, seamless walls of mu metal, a specialized alloy of nickel and iron specifically engineered to absorb and deflect ambient magnetic fields away from the delicate diagnostic core inside. Without this artificial cage, stray electromagnetic noise from nearby power lines or subway systems would instantly scramble the scanner, rendering its detailed images useless. Planet Earth operates on an almost identical principle, scaled up to a planetary magnitude. Deep beneath the rocky mantle, a liquid iron outer core sloshes in continuous churning convection currents, acting as a massive geodynamo that wraps the globe in a protective magnetic vault. The biological compass built into the living tissue of migratory birds. A delicate quantum mechanism tuned precisely to those faint lines of force is a testament to how deeply life has adapted to existence inside this natural chamber. But when that planetary dynamo stumbles and dies, the mu metal cage dissolves. Earth becomes an unshielded instrument sitting directly in the path of a cosmic particle accelerator, leaving every living cell exposed to the unfiltered fury of our local star. Lifting our eyes from this hypothetical landscape forces a quiet reframe of our relationship with the planet. Geophysicists who study paleomagnetism, reading the orientation of microscopic iron particles locked in ancient basaltic lava flows, know that Earth's magnetic field is far from an eternal, unchanging constant. Over millions of years, the magnetic poles have wandered, weakened, and periodically flipped, undergoing long, tumultuous transitions that stretched across thousands of years. But those deep geological shifts unfolded on a timescale so vast that living ecosystems had centuries to bend, drift, adapt, and retune themselves to the changing currents. Our entire modern technological civilization, our satellite constellations, digital power grids, high-altitude flight corridors, and hyper-connected cities, was constructed entirely within a tiny, exceptionally tranquil window of magnetic stability. We have mistaken a brief period of planetary calm for an eternal guarantee. Contemplating a world where the magnetic shield vanishes does not offer a timeline for disaster. Rather, it reveals the exquisite, fragile balance that allows our world to function. We are not merely inhabitants standing on a solid ball of rock. We are passengers riding atop a churning, molten engine, sustained every single second by an invisible shield we can neither see, nor touch, nor repair. High above a silent, changed landscape, a ragged V of geese fractures and scatters into the gray evening air. The invisible highway that guided their kind across millions of autumns has faded into the void. And for the first time in the history of the Earth, they are guessing.